I'm its largest shareholder. Well, I guess I'm not. Jupiter is and
Yeah.
Eric is, but I'm right behind them. And with my family, we're at 10%. I know some people are afraid, and there was some concern that I was going to abandon ship, and that was that. That's not the case. This is my number one priority. I got $17.5 million of my own money tied up in it. I'm not going anywhere.
You can buy like legends, in the market right now at discounts. Do you guys want to talk about what you're looking at or what you've been buying as the opportunity with this correction or?
Pull up a chart on Apollo, tout my own for the time being. I mean, it's barely $3, or I guess it's Canadian 3.20 right now. But pull up a 1 year chart on that, and you're gonna find it below the 200-day moving average. Look at any chart over history in these things. It's
Yep.
things that fly up come down. Things that come down that fast go back up.
Yep.
So there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah.
Like there's just you could throw a dart right now. There's real opportunity.
$70 silver, which is roughly where we're at right now, or $4,400 gold. When those numbers were hit on the way up, investors were going apeshit, and share prices of almost every company were a lot stronger than they are now with $70 silver and $4,400 gold. There's
Exactly.
no economic justification for that.
For disclosure purposes, our site does not make recommendations for purchases or sale of stocks, services, or products. Nothing on our site or this podcast should be construed as an offer or solicitation to buy or sell products or securities. All investing involves risk and possible losses. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For disclosure purposes, Apollo Silver is a paid-for client on the Investor Ideas website.
Andy and Chris, it's great to always have both of you on the show. Lots of updates to talk about for Apollo Silver. Chris, I'm going to let you start it off with some questions for Andy on the recent news on their PEA.
Yeah, and actually, before we get into the PEA, Andy, I just wanted to take care of one housekeeping thing. You guys are going to have a board meeting, and it's been determined that Tom Paragudoff, who used to be the CEO for you, and went off and had some other successes that he had to take care of, and now you want him back, potentially not only as a director, but in the executive chairman role. So I want you to explain to people that don't know Tom why he's the man for that job right now. And also the corollary is that you're not going anywhere. You're still the major shareholder of the company. You're not going off into the sunset by any means.
Yeah, and thanks, Chris, for bringing that up. So there is a AGM, and that'll of course be followed up by board meetings. And well, so I mean, Jupiter Asset Management, Eric Sprott, and I and my family control about 30% of the company. So I would expect that the management slate's going to get elected at the upcoming AGM. Tom and I started this company in 2021, and then Tom's, for personal reasons, decided that he wanted to step out of an executive role, and then he took a board seat on Mag Silver. That's what helped us to get the option on Cinco de Mayo. Because of community issues at Cinco de Mayo, we didn't want to have, I'll call it, cross-contamination with Mag. So we asked Tom to step off the board of Apollo. Mag getting bought by Pan American freed Tom up, and Tom was going to go somewhere, and Tom is incredibly valuable anywhere he goes. And so to lose him to some other silver explorer developer is not in the best interest of Apollo shareholders. So I reached out to Tom to get him to come here. And because Tom's got a pretty good handle on operational, knows the company, is well respected by its shareholders, I said, hey, why don't I give you my chairman role? I'm its largest shareholder. Well, I guess I'm not. Jupiter is and
Yeah.
Eric is, but I'm right behind them. And with my family, we're at 10%. I mean, people that know me know I like to raise money and I like to promote. So I'll give the operational end to the engineers and the geos and the operational guys. As long as they're doing their job, you take that over. I'm fine. Let me do what I like doing. And so I know some people are afraid, and there was some concern that I was going to abandon ship, and that was that. That's not the case. This is my number one priority. I got $17.5 million of my own money tied up in it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be on the bottom line with Ross McElroy, Tom Paragudoff, and me, and a whole good team underneath that to advance this company. And it'll free me up to do what I like to do. So that's the whole thing behind bringing Tom back to the game.
And then what Callie led off with, and I don't know how you want to phrase this, Callie, but yeah, the other big news right now that directly and immediately impacts Apollo is that you announced just a few days back that you're going to do full-blown PEA for Calico. You've got SLR Consulting, a name that people that follow mining companies know very, very well, that's going to be handling that for you. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see some of this in action when I'm out in that part of the world in the next few weeks. But tell us about what the nuts and bolts are, Andy, of the economic study that they're going to be doing.
The project has been drilled for years. It doesn't need any more work. It needs a little more metallurgical work. It needs some geotech drilling to help with pit wall slopes and things like that, and some rock mechanics exercises for PFS and higher. But right now, you can do a PEA on it. And so it's got to go through an economic study. We all believe that it's not smart. And even though, most of the Waterloo resource is measured, and certainly 90-something% of it's measured and indicated, it sounds like you could go to PFS, but you shouldn't never miss steps in economic study. That's just a recipe for failure. So get the PEA done first. And while that PEA is going on, which will be 4 to 5 months of work, the team should be able to get in there and do that geotechnical drilling and get some more rock from metallurgical studies to do the more advanced metallurgical studies that will all feed into a PFS. So ultimately, PEA over the next 4 to 5 months, that likely gets delivered in the third quarter. And in it, there'll be some optionality. There'll be, what does it look like? Can we build a mine around just Waterloo, or is Langtree a possibility too? And should we look at them two together, or should we just look at the one? And then, so that question will get answered. The general economics will get answered. We'll get to put some sort of NPV on it. And I'm not supposed to project numbers and things like that under 43-101 until they're officially out there and stamped by some independent. But your viewers can do this themselves with Claude or Grok or Chat GPT. All you got to do is ask it the simple question: what does a PEA look like, or the NPV look like on the Waterloo project? That's the only question you got to ask. Ask it that question. You'll get the numbers. It'll do it all for you. 6 months ago, you could not do a PEA at $40 or $50 just because silver was $30. And I don't think anybody thought it was ever going to, well, that's not fair to say. Eric did, and his and his prognosticators said it was going to go to 75 or 100 and blah, blah, blah. And they were right. But, the general consensus, especially in the precious metal space, is we're backward looking. And so even though the silver's trading at $30, we're all doing our feasibilities and our pre-feasibilities at $24 silver and $26 silver. And, so anyway, now silver makes that big move. The public's going to get to see what the present value of the Calico deposits really are. And then aligned with that, I suspect, given a little bit of time here, we're going to see something come out of the company on permitting and engaging consultants on that permitting process, because that's got to kind of go hand in hand with all this economic study.
Updates for Mexico that we want to talk about as well?
We made a comment in mid-December. A news release came out from the company saying that we expected that the ejido Benito Juarez was going to call for an assembly early in 2026. But it's a bit of a sensitive topic, because we don't want to steer people wrong, and we don't want to underemphasize things or overemphasize. And things are going well in the community. I'm one of the largest shareholders in a company that has the only mineral deposit within miles of the place. There's no industry there. They need Cinco de Mayo. The majority of people know they need Cinco de Mayo. The North American economy is in trouble. There are all these assembly plants in Mexico are closing. You know, there was an assembly plant that made wiring harnesses for Toyota Camrys in the region. It employed 200 people, mostly women of the community, just making wiring harnesses. It shut down. Like, these people don't have work. And all these little agricultural problems. So, for instance, the price of a ton of corn drops from 5,500 to 4,200. Well, the farmers in Sinaloa quit growing corn, and instead they grow chilies. And they get 3 growing seasons a year. So they can pretty well wipe out the chili farmers of Benito Juarez. And now, and I've told your viewers in the past that the chili farmers let their jalapeno chilies dry on the vine, and they make a dried red chili, which they use for a Chipotle product. Well, the buyers have told the farmers that there's the warehouses are full of dried chilies, so they're not going to be a market for them this year. So you got to pick them green. That causes another problem for them, because it's a crop that they get 50% of the national average from. And I can throw these stats at you all day long. The Ejido has 130 parcels of land that they lease to farmers. That's how they get revenue. I think only 8 of them have been leased this year. Maybe it's 30, but it's like 20% or less of the land has been leased. And ConAgua, the organization that gives them their water, has told them that they don't get water for 30 hectares this year. They only get water for 8.5. Like, these people are in trouble, and mines can spin off a lot of value for communities. And so they know they need it.
Big picture then, Andy, what is it going to take to get this thing across the finish line as far as you getting the social license down there?
We have to have a vote. The community has to have a vote. And the majority of the people want to have that vote. There are still a few holdouts, and they are dropping. I went to PDAC and I met with the federal minister of mines and 4 or 5 of his understudies. Then I met with the state minister of mines and the secretary of economic development. And last Wednesday, our legal counsel met with the attorney general for the state. Things are moving in the right direction. These things take time. We would rather, 13 years ago, when the Ejido tried to have a vote to overturn the mining ban and to accept a proposal that MAG made at the time, it was about $5 million to the community. They never got to have the meeting. It got disrupted by the no side. We don't want that disruption. So we're doing the best we can to get everybody on side before we call that vote, so that we don't have the same thing that happened 13 years ago. And progress is being made. The company,
and you're the primary whip, as we would call it in a legislative sense, to get the votes counted ahead of time.
Yes, that's right. That's what I and Alejandro Carveo do.
Yeah.
We've done this in Mexico in the past. It was a bit difficult at Prime. It got done. This isn't about us being smarter, better, richer, whatever. This is about it's time. These guys don't have any other options. And Cinco de Mayo makes sense for them. We know it's a good deposit. We know it's an underground mine, or would be an underground mine. We know that underground mines trap water. So in the long run, it satisfies all the needs of the community. It satisfies the needs of the government. It can help them to bring water for their district, for their farms. Right. it works, and it would be a cash cow. I'm feeling really good about it. I mean, I don't want to influence people to, you got to make your own decisions on things, but I'm deep, and you can just tell from my insider buying, I'm going deeper. I'm not, we're gonna win this one.
I do want to get back to Calico real quick though, Andy, ask one question. I don't know if it's premature yet or not. When you're looking at doing the PEA, I know we've talked before about the possibility that given the zinc component, given the barite, given that even silver now is classified as a critical metal, at what point is it starting to look more viable that maybe you get some federal money or grant from the defense, well, now we call it the War Department, not the Defense Department, but from the War Department or the Energy Department? Are they going to be part of this at some point, do you think?
Interesting. My partner, Anthony Patterson, he's a shareholder of Apollo, but he's my partner on several other things in this office, was on a call with the Department of Commerce yesterday, and he was mentioning to me that we're going to be filing a application to the new DOE, NOFO, and the DIBC when cycle 2 opens up. Now, I have no idea what all that means at all, but we're looking for further guidance from them on what we need to do to talk about offtake and blah, 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 and all that. So
okay,
there's stuff in the works.
good stuff.
Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about the macros? We're not, don't have our crystal ball here for what's going to happen with the war, whether that actually is a cease or it's going to switch gears again. But what are you seeing out there? What do you see for the short term for investors, especially in the commodities space?
Short term for me, and look, the way that I make recommended allocations and, this much exposure to this sector or that sector, whatever in my newsletter, we cut our exposure overall to metals, precious metals and base metals, and even throwing uranium in there by nearly 2/3 from our peak allocation early last fall to early this year, because, and this is before the Iran war started, I've been concerned that we are way overdue to have a deflationary blow off, not in, unfortunately, the price of groceries and whatnot, but in the markets. And a lot of people I know have covered what's going on in private credit right now. This is analogous to what happened with subprime mortgages and real estate in 2006 and 7 into 2008. And all of a sudden, the bankers couldn't keep all of the plates in the air spinning on those sticks, and it all collapsed. And that's where we're at right now in the financial markets. I think, without getting too far afield, I think that the war and what it has unleashed, and still probably will unleash further, is going to accelerate a contraction in global economies, in the credit markets and stuff. It's going to accelerate on the downside, the kind of correction that was already baked into the cake. But what it's also going to do is hasten the day when the Fed, regardless of how much inflation is still sticky, as Jerome Powell told us again a week ago, they will have no choice but to resurrect quantitative easing in a much bigger and forceful way, because that's all that they know to do. When things start to fall apart, they got to print even more money. So we're going to have inflation baked into the cake, and investors are going to be at a place shortly that they were in the end of 2008, when everything was under stress, and the central bank back then started printing money, and the economy was going to be so badly broken that disproportionately it's going to start out benefiting precious metals. And if you remember, you had this huge run back then, silver raced higher, gold raced higher, all the equities raced higher, because all of this money printing wasn't going to have any traction on the economy, and it went disproportionately into the good, safe havens that are inflation hedges, being precious metals. And I think we're going to have a repeat of that. We may not see the magnitude of the selling everywhere else that we did back then, but the pattern is the same. So I've been telling people, again, now that we've met my downside target, and I hope it doesn't get any worse than that on gold, we're getting there on silver, that this is a time when precious metals and the best precious metals companies that are getting nearer to production, you want to be doubling down on the good stories. These are long-term winners, and You don't want to try and pick the exact bottom with good stories. I think we're closer to the end now of the correction in the precious metals than to the beginning, whatever else goes on.
Been investing for a long time, and I've made the bulk of the returns being long-term thinking. And so,
Yeah.
like I remember back in the days of Prime, it rallied up and then it fell back down, and then they issues on the property and it dropped even further and blah, 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 and up and down. And but if you held Prime all the way through the cycle to where we sold it off to Torex and now you own Torex stock, you got more money now for it than any one of those times before. So
That Ned Naylor Leland is ago, I had Peter Kraut on my podcast, and he requoted him that he was talking about producers are trading at like 2 times NAV, but developers in silver 0.2 times NAV. So if you're buying like developers right now and they turn into production, that's a 10x like right away.
I was listening to Rick Rule a while back, and he said that of his most explosive long-term winners, stocks that he got into early, held them through ups and downs and sideways and gyrations and whatever, and ended up with 6, 8, 10,000% returns. On average, there were at least 3 times, he said, on each one where the stock was cut in half.
Right. Yeah.
On the way up.
That's right.
And if you let yourself get shaken out of it and don't keep your eye on the prize, you miss those gains.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Rick has a big shareholding in Vizsla Silver, and I was listening to him comment about that the other day, and he goes like, "Hey, it's a world-class deposit. It will affect the communities for 50 miles around it for decades." Yeah, there's some issues right now with cartel action and other Civil War problems, but those ultimately will get addressed, and the size of the prize will win out in the end. And you got to be patient, and if you can't, then trade the things. Like, there's a bunch of guys and women, and there's some investors from my kids' hockey team that all bought Apollo. And I said to them, like, hey, if you own it cheap and it's trading up here, sell some of it if you want. Like, don't, I'm very patient. I will wait out. I want the big victory at the end of the day. And I'm willing to take those chances on most things that I think I have a good handle on. I get that not everybody has the same investment philosophy or investment timelines or blah, blah, blah. So, things run up, you make some money. It always feels good to put some money in your jeans and have a win. So you can take them here and there, but
Right.
long term. And I just can't believe that this, what I would have thought or think is a generational change, is going to be over that fast. Once this whole war in the Middle East gets figured out, we're back on. And like you said, the money printing is just, think about how much money they're going to be printing now
Bottom line is the precious metals are going to win, frankly led by gold, but it'll drag silver along for some of the same reasons. They're going to win regardless. I could say that, copper, for example, which has dropped by 20% or so, whatever it is right now from its high. Long-term, copper should be $8 or $10 and needs to be a pound to incentivize enough of the production we need. Right now, it's $5.25 or whatever it is. It's dropped from $6.50 or $6.60. It can't stay there economically any more than silver's going to stay at $60 or $70 long-term, or gold's even going to stay where it's at. So a lot of these things got to work themselves out. The war could still get uglier and postpone things, but long-term, bottom line is that more money is going to be printed. There's going to be more inflation. It's going to benefit all of these things. And I think especially when you start looking at the job of putting together the Middle East again, rebuilding it. Wouldn't you love to be BlackRock right now? You're making $1 zillion from missiles destroying stuff, and you're going to make $1 zillion on the other side through all of your investments rebuilding everything. And that's all going to take metals and energy and commodities. So we're in the right place.
You can buy like legends, in the market right now, discounts. Do you guys want to talk about what you're looking at or what you've been buying as the opportunity with this correction? Or
I mean, I think I pull up a chart on Apollo, so I'll tout my own for the time being. I mean, it's barely $3, or I guess it's Canadian 3.20 right now, but pull up a 1 year chart on that, and you're gonna find it below the 200-day moving average significantly. Like the 200-day moving average is probably $3.75. Look at any chart over history in these things. It's things that fly up, come down. Things that come down that fast go back up.
Yep.
So I don't know. There's a lot of stocks I like out there. West Point's one that I'm a big shareholder of. I'm a board member, so it's a bit blowing my own horn or talking my own portfolio, but West Point's fallen 50%. Drilling a pretty good project in Arizona. Montage, it's another big Lundin company. High of 19, back down at 12 something dollars, and they're 6 months away. This goes with Chris's theme. They start producing about 400,000 ounces annually at the end of this year. They're in the final stages of construction now, and on a huge mine in Western Australia. Same group that built Endeavour Mining into the, I don't know what it is, $15 billion success now or whatever. Anyway, there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah.
Like there's just, you could throw a dart. Right now, there's real opportunity.
Lots of good companies are 30 to 50% off their highs of not that many weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and to me, what's interesting to see right now is that, whether you want to put, $70 silver, which is roughly where we're at right now, or $4,400 gold, when those numbers were hit on the way up, investors were going apeshit, and share prices of almost every company were a lot stronger than they are now with $70 silver and $4,400 gold.
Exactly.
There's no economic justification for that, but it's all about investor psychology again. And and I told people when the war started, the first Sunday night, if you remember, before the first trading Monday after the war started a few weeks back, I told people don't trust this knee-jerk pop higher in gold because it's going to go down.
Right.
And one of the reasons I said that is that the same FOMO, fear of missing out traders, that got into silver late, got into gold late, that's not where the fun is for them now. It's on chasing oil or natural gas or gold stocks or whatever.
Right.
That's just the fact of life. Okay. The narrative will change again to where those same people are going to be forced to come back and revisit gold and silver at probably lower prices than what they got when they got scared out this time around. But it's going to happen, and that's how these things always work. Especially when you listen to, if I can throw in a plug for the Orange Wonder here, whose story changes by the hour as to where we're going.
Right.
And this whole thing.
He's had some good.
He needs to stick to that. Which
He does. And so his foray into Iranian politics, I'm not sure about that.
right.
So having said, I mean, he would be my choice if I was American and got to vote. I would have for sure. But I appreciate what Fareed Zakaria said about him in his first term. He called him a bullshit artist. And
He
so
is.
he's very good at it. But he's very unpredictable. He'll do something today and he'll realize tomorrow, shoot, that's going to cause a bigger economic problem for everybody else. And I got more detractors than I really thought I was going to have. And so I'm going to have to change that playbook. And like you just said, he's quite unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that well, I guess for a lot of the traders in our world, that's probably a good thing. But for us long term, a little more stability would be helpful.
We're only a few months away from the USMCA needing to be rejiggered.
Oh, right.
And,
Yep.
and so there's a lot of things that if he can focus on what his strengths are and get back to worrying about this, this big, what does Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, call it? Fortress AmCan. Let's get back to that.
Mhm.
And because even here in the U.S., just like in Mexico, people don't understand that even though, because he loves the bombast, we've lost net manufacturing jobs even in the U.S. in the last 12 months.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so
Huh.
we need to have him get back to his knitting and look at how to make not only America great again from that standpoint, but to really galvanize our hemisphere. Then we don't need to worry about Middle Eastern oil. We don't need to worry about Russian uranium. We don't need to worry about China rare earth processing. We get it all done here. And that's what he needs to come back to. That's enough of my editorializing.
Chris, maybe it's a question for you and Andy, but what are the qualities you look for? Because we always talk about great management, but what are the qualities like that you would say Andy, Tom, Ross all have, or what are the qualities you would say for some of the companies that you really like the management of?
Secretariat was the greatest racehorse of all time, but he was helped by having a good seasoned jockey that knew how to handle that horse. And that's what you want to look for. I love my bet on a jockey theme, and Andy's one of the best jockeys in the industry. Ross has had great success. Tom has had great success. And the other thing I think that's important for folks right now, too, especially when you look at some of you can call it carnage in some cases of share prices and what's happened in just the last couple, 3 months. What is going to recover because they have something that's going to be newsworthy this year in 2026? Okay, you're doing a PEA. You're hopefully before much longer, 2026, going to have Cinco de Mayo under your belt as well. That's something near term that's going to mean something, whatever the metal prices happen to be doing that day or that week. And that's another thing I would urge people to look at too, when they're looking at doing some bottom fishing on a lot of these stocks that have got great stories long term. They've corrected sharply. Okay, that's nice, but if we're going to plod along here for a while, focus on ones that have got something that's going to happen sooner rather than later to get investors re-engaged.
To me, management's everything. It's hard to, there's so many. Look, there's 2,500 companies in our space here in Vancouver. And yeah,
I forgot the number was that high.
it's crazy. And there's not, and I don't know how many good ones there are, but
not the majority.
no, not the majority. And you've got to try and figure out, you've got to isolate away lifestyle guys. I know people that they're still promoting the same story they were promoting 30 years ago, and we're going to raise a couple $1 million, we're going to go drilling again this year, and we're going to add another blah 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 tons of copper or this much gold, but there's no end game. They don't have a game. They don't have any plan those are lifestyle guys. And then there's pump and dump guys. And there's all kinds of people out there with different agendas. When markets are tough like this, you can buy the best names out there. You don't have to take risks on any of those outliers, those that might be lifestyle, might be pump and dump guys. You can pick. You can stay with the Lundins. You can stay with, you want to talk about the Lundin family? Started by Adolf, unbelievable business developer. Then his son, and Lucas unfortunately passed a few years ago. But look at Jack and Adam now, and the organization they're running, and the companies and the value they deliver to shareholders. And then there's guys like Sean Kuhn out there, young and hardworking and very successful. And there's just so many good people out there that you can put your money with, and they're going to deliver, and they're going to fight till the very end. And they're not running from one thing to another. And,
right.
they put their money up, they work hard,